everyone, and welcome back to World of Warships Blitz with Terry. Today we'll be looking at HE spammers, and more particularly to talk about a little bit about the last update and see what kind of impact that has on the fire damage that we all used to and love racking up. So the biggest question probably on everybody's mind is, does this change? And if you're not aware of the change, I'll quickly repeat it. Does this change make high explosive firing cruisers no longer viable? So the change from the last upgrade is that the fire and flooding resistance, which you can see here, which previously was just a factor of preventing fires from initially happening, actually has now also become a damage reduction factor. So if a ship has a fire and flooding resistance of 10%, like the De Grasse here, it'll take 10% less damage from a fire. Now, that means obviously that ships that are used to doing this sort of thing will accrue less damage overall. But it also very much becomes a question of what are you shooting at. So previously, let's think about a ship like, for example, the Seattle. The Seattle has 12 guns. They have a just over 5-second reload time, and she has a 5% fire chance. So every 5 seconds roughly, if you get 10 shells on target, you have 10 times a 5% fire chance. That doesn't make a 50% fire chance, but even with a relatively good fire and flooding resistance, eventually you will be on fire. And a lot of people damage control after the first fire because, well, they don't want to take the damage, even though, especially if you're under fire from a cruiser that has a high fire chance and or rapid firing guns, that's usually not a very good idea. But that's given that you're not going to do a lot of damage with the guns themselves. So, for example, the Seattle here has a main battery high explosive damage of 496. Which means that if your target has a 10% damage reduction, that'll take 40-50 points off. And then you're mostly not going to score full penetrations with the high explosive, especially at range, because these are 150 millimeter high explosive. You're shooting at battleships. Mostly you're going to score semi-pens. So you're going to end up with maybe 200 points of damage per shot. Now, on 10 shots, that's still 2,000 points of damage, which isn't something to be sneezed at, but it's not a huge amount. So you're not going to do a huge amount of damage purely with your high explosive shells. You're relying to some degree on the additional damage over time that you're making with fires, and that gets reduced. Now, if we have a look at the tech tree, and let's take a look at some mid-tier ships. So, for example, the New Mexico, and this will become important in a second. The New Mexico has a fire and flooding resistance of 13% in my setup here. I don't know, that's probably not even the base value. This is not a huge amount, so you're going to do 13% less damage with your fires. It's noticeable, but it's not a huge amount. Where it becomes a lot more interesting is in the upper tier. So for example, the Iowa here has a fire and flooding resistance of 30%. So that is noticeable. You're going to do 1/3 less damage with fires against this ship. And the Monty at tier 10 is also having a 30% base damage reduction, but she does get the legendary module, which boosts that even more. So with American ships in general, and it's kind of similar. So if you look at the Des Moines, that's a 26% fire and flooding resistance, which now also means roughly 1/4 less damage taken from fires. It's not the same story for the other ships though. So if you look, for example, at the Japanese ships, let's look at the Izumo. The Izumo has a 12.5% base fire and flooding resistance. So you're gonna set an Izumo on fire more easily than, say, a Montana. But if you are throwing enough at the wall, something will eventually stick. So even with a Montana with a relatively high fire and flooding resistance, you only have a 30% chance not to be set on fire, which is countering the 5, 6, 7, 8% that you per shell hit that you do have to be set on fire. So this has led to, for example, for me in the North Carolina, which on paper has a 22.5% fire and flooding resistance, to still, if we're looking at the equipment, to still actually fly the deck protection module, because it just reduces the fire chance by 20%. I don't know if this is a separate factor in its stacks, but I was getting set on fire a lot in this ship. So in battleships, this factor here has basically been meaningless, pretty much. It didn't in higher tiers, and you're facing something like Worcesters. You're facing things like Zaos, right? Have you looked at the Zao? This thing has 12 200mm guns with a 9% fire chance. So you will get set on fire. There are carriers, and dive bombers have a high chance of setting fires. You will get set on fire, even with a relatively high fire and flooding resistance. So what this means is that you are, if you're in an American ship, not going to take that much damage from fire. If you're in a non-American ship, it's a very different story. So, like, for example, the German battleships. Großer Kurfürst at tier 10. She gets 12.5%. Let's have a look at the French battleships. Let's say the République at tier 10. She gets 12.5%. So, what you can kind of assume is that you'll be roughly doing 10% less damage with fires, unless you're shooting at high-tier American ships. And this is really for the high-tier ones. The mid-tier ones don't really get that either. So in general, you can say fire chance across the board has been reduced by around fire damage across the board has been reduced by around 10%, except for high-tier American ships. That's where you're really going to see a big difference. So, which brings us back to my filter is kind of, how do I get back to the ships I actually had in the filter? Okay, I'm going to clear the filter, do it again. So show me cruises. Okay, that's better. So let's take two ships out and just play a typical battle, right? I haven't really been trying to get battles here which are exceptional in that how you're setting fires. These are normal battles I would have played with these ships before. Let's take the Seattle and the de Grasse out. The de Grasse is the premium tier 6 French light cruiser, and you could take the Galissonière as well. They're very similar. She gets a 7% fire chance on a 7-second reload with the 150s. And the Seattle, the American tier 9 light cruiser, gets a 5% fire chance on 5-second reload with the 150s. There are a lot more ships that are affected by this, but let's take these two out and just play regular battles and see how that turns out. So in the de Grasse here, we are top tier on Bay of Storms, and the enemy team has two bots, a Mutsuki and a Ryujo, but we have a Fuso, Oktoberskaya New York, Pensacola, and a Casta on the enemy team. So let's do this. How would I normally play the de Grasse with it in this kind of situation? Well, the de Grasse has two of her turrets forward, which means she can go bow in quite a lot, and she's just generally an all-around amazing tier 6 light cruiser. So we'll there's one destroyer which is not a bot, so there's a 50-50 chance that I'm going to get the bot destroyer on this side. So I'm just going to stick with a high explosive, because again we want to demonstrate what we can do with fires and how this kind of ship now plays in a normal battle scenario. So I'm also expecting to be able to see one of the battleships relatively early on. So just heading down towards the corner, and we'll see what we spot. Okay, one of the enemy battleships is spotted in the cap. That means there's two more to be seen. Okay, I'm detected and I'm not seeing what's coming, so it's either the Acasta is over there, so it's the bot. Okay, that makes things easier, because bots are harmless, because bots don't really torpedo. So, usually I would switch over to the armor piercing here, but I want to see what I can do with fires. Okay, bot's on fire. And I can probably just leave him here and see if he's going to eat some torpedoes. Yes, he is. Okay, which leaves the Pensacola, so I'm going to go in reverse. Pensacola has very dangerous guns. So I'm going to drop some torpedoes, go in reverse, and try to set the Pensacola on fire. Now, Pensacola is an American cruiser, but it's tier 6, so she's not going to have the huge amount of defense that we have in other American cruisers. And the Pensacola is sailing straight ahead. It's trying to hit me with the 200 mils, which are very dangerous. Now she's on fire and takes a torpedo hit. Damage controls the single fire, but the Iron Duke actually is going to blab her in the side as well. So yeah, the Pensacola is pretty dead at this point. I'm just going to see if I can get another fire. Okay, so now that's a perma-fire, but I don't think there's going to be much left of the ship because she just got blapped in the side by the Duke. So we'll get another fire, but she's already dead. Okay. Meanwhile, two of the enemy battleships have been spotted on that flank, and there is the remaining one. So now I just need to get through that Iron Duke here. Excuse me while I'm maneuvering around. I know, light cruiser. Okay, there's the Oktoberskaya, and I'm again bow in and just gonna see if I can start some fires. I don't really need to get any closer. It looks like the Oktoberskaya is actually stopping or even reversing. So, oh yeah, because he spotted the Musky, so that would explain that. And the Oktoberskaya comes preloaded with a high explosive. So if you're in a destroyer, you do have to be a little bit careful. Not yet in torp range. But since he's focusing on the destroyer, I get to set a fire. He damage controls the single fire. So that means any subsequent fires that I can set or any floods that the Musky can set are going to be perma. So that's a perma fire. And he's dodged the torpedoes because, well, he seems to be knowing what he's doing. He's going bow in, but now he's got 2 perma fires going. And I'm just going to head over into the cap circle at this point because there's the Mutsky and there's a British battleship that's following up. So I'm just going to head over to the cap circle and see what I can do over there. And that's another fire. And he has no way of dealing with it. So this is, you're just burning them down at this point. The carrier is a bot, so I'm not super concerned because the torpedo bombers are not going to hit and dive bombers are not going to do a huge amount of damage. So I'm just going to ignore the bot pretty much and see if I can do something about these battleships over there. So that's the New York. Again, American battleship. Again, okay, the Mutsky takes out the Oktoberskaya. Again, mid-tier. So not kind of the crazy amounts of resistance that you're getting in higher tiers. It's like tier 8 is where it really starts to make a dent. So insta-fire, and he damage controls immediately, so any kind of fire I'll set from here on out are going to be perma-fires. And with the sheer amount of shells that I can hurl towards that New York, and you see I do 200 points of damage. So just half damage, but with the sheer amount of shells, there is a decent chance that at some point I'm going to set a fire. And okay, now the Ryujo is getting on my nerves, setting me on fire, so that thing needs to die. So I'm just going to see if I can get him on fire, plus get him to take these torpedoes. I'm going to get back to the New York in a second, but the battle is won at this point. We're just farming damage right now, so we might as well get back to the New York. The New York's okay. That's double fire on the Ryujo, and it's a bot, so it's not going to damage control. And I'm just going to see, need to lead a little bit more. I thought New York would be slower than that, but yeah, now we just need to kill these 2 remaining ships. And there's another fire on the New York, and his damage control should still be on cooldown, so there's no way that he can actually take that. And it's 2 more fires, and there she goes. And the Ryujo is probably dead as well at this point. Still some planes for me to shoot at. I mean, no danger really from a bot carrier. And yeah, 73,000 points of damage and 15 fires. This is not unusual for the De Grasse. This is to be expected, the amount of fires that you can set with one of those things. Like I said, this is an absolutely dangerous ship. And the Galissonière, the tech tree equivalent, is really... she doesn't have to hide at all. They are extremely dangerous ships. So we've done 17,000 points of damage with fire. Yeah, I would have expected maybe around 20. So that's kind of to be assumed. So under ideal circumstances, people immediately damage controlling, me setting a reasonable amount of fires with this ship. This is kind of the kind of damage that I'm expecting. So it's a bit less, right? But it's not dramatic. It's not like, oh, I'm only doing half the damage that I'm normally doing. So I've done a decent amount of damage with my torpedoes, and I have done 17,000 points of damage with my fires, which again is a little bit lower than I would usually estimate with this kind of play, but it's within reason. So let's try the same thing with the Seattle, because then we're up in higher tiers. And here we are, and we are top tier in a mostly people battle on fault line. What do we have in the enemy team? You know that I've described that before, that I usually scan the team list on the opening stage of the battle to identify priority targets. This is just a little change to how you're identifying these now. So we've got 2 North Carolinas, and as we know, North Carolina tier 8 is kind of where it starts to have a better fire resistance. So if I got either the Musashi or the Gascogne to shoot at and set on fire, then I would prioritize these over the North Carolinas. Simple as that. If I don't have anything else to shoot at, I might as well do damage to the North Cals. They will burn. They will take less damage, but they will still burn just like all the other ones. But the Yugomo really is probably my priority target. And there are no carriers, so I don't have to worry about that. So we'll just see how this plays. Fault line is a very island-heavy map, so I'm fully expecting their destroyers to be sneaking around. It's relatively difficult to actually spot anything in these maps, but I do have a radar if necessary. So it's I am equipped to hunt destroyers, even with plenty of islands around. So where do we go from here? We've got Roma with us, so we've got some heavy guns behind us, and we've got a cruiser on the other flank. So whatever destroyer is coming down either way is probably going to run into one of us, which means I can stay on the flank. I don't have to go central, and just kind of lay in wait here to see what's coming around. For battleships, these maps are dreadful because there's just so many places you can ambush. If you're running in a destroyer-heavy battle on these maps, it's really not fun because you can't even sit in your cap circle because there's enough islands that destroyers can sneak up on you from there. Not fun with battleships, these maps. But I'm in a cruiser, so I'm just gonna yeah, there's the Gascogne. Okay, remember Gascogne, not an American battleship, so it'll burn just as nicely as it used to. So I'm just peacefully aligning myself such that I'm not giving broadside when I open up, and then we start opening up on the Gascogne. Now he might or may not have. Oh, he's a bit faster than I thought. Not expected me. Okay, Kagero is a bot. Don't have to worry about that because bots don't torpedo very well. I mean, he may have. So, let's err on the side of caution. Okay, the Gascogne should pop around at that island there again. Okay. And then we can keep sending the high explosive his ways. Yep, oh, some bot torps. Okay. Okay, that's one fire on the Gascogne. Is he going to damage con? Yep, insta damage con. So, okay, any fires that I set from here are going to be burning out. And I'm still ignoring the Kagero because who cares? It's a bot. I want to get a permafire on the Gascogne or 2 if I can. And there we go, 2 permafires on the Gascogne. Can I get a third? Okay, at this point it looks like our team is unpleasantly focusing on this side here. So I think I'm going to motor forward. Also the Gascogne is shooting back at me, which I can't be having with. But then these 2 fires are going to burn out, so we're going to be doing some decent amount of damage. Let's see if I can get another one while he's still in range, but I do want to get over to the other side of the map because the Yugomo hasn't been spotted. And it looks like that cruiser on our other flank is getting into a close range fight with 3 battleships, which is probably not healthy for him. So, since all my team's over here, I'll be better off on the other side. Okay, North Carolina. Again, American battleship, not easily flammable. It doesn't take that much damage from fire, but I don't have anything else to shoot at, so I might as well. Fire's fire, damage. And he's taken a couple of torps. Someone finally took out the bot Kagero. Now half my team's on the other side, and there's nothing for them to shoot at. And someone's calling defend base. Yeah, I know, I agree. I think the Yugomo is going to loop around somewhere here. So I'm just acknowledging, saying, okay, yeah, I'm going to go for the base. And, oh, we got a fire on the North Cal. He insta damage cons, but unfortunately I can't really spend that time, setting permafires, because I am needed over here. Because, hey, look who's there, who's been looping all around. Okay. And Yugomo just torped the Amalfi, so I am very much needed over here, because 3 minutes is way long enough to cap out, and the Yugomo is never going to be outspotted by the battleships. So some more Yugomo torps, but I don't think I have to dodge those. There was a Mogami here as well, so there could be more torpedoes in the water. And yeah, I'm just letting my team know that I'm defending my base. Now, usually you would have wanted to gather some more damage, but our base is under threat, and the battleships are in no position to do anything about it, and I'm the only remaining cruiser, so, well, there goes that. Okay, I'm spotted. That means Yugomo's right. Yeah, there he is. I'm not yet using my radar, just the hydro, because Yugomo has a smoke. So in case he decides to smoke up. And okay, there he goes, smoke. So radar up. There's the Yugomo. Sets me on fire. I'm not damage controlling because again I'm in an American ship. I'm not actually taking that much damage from fires. And there come his torpedoes. But I'm already turning, so these are gonna miss. There's no way he can torpedo me in that ring, and there he's dead. Right. So for the rest of the battle, I've got the Mogami to shoot at, so there are some more torpedoes in the water most likely. But I have taken almost no damage from that fire, and yeah, the Mogami is running for it. There's not really much happening anymore the rest of the battle, so I'm just gonna go, well, skip ahead to the end, and we'll have a look at the results screen. Because we're just going to be chasing the Mogami from here on out. And he's going undetected, and it's just all around. But we did win this in the end. There we go. And the Tirpitz takes the MVP. And we actually won by a relatively slim margin at the end here, because the rest of the ships were all up north. So, we've done almost 10,000 damage with fire. And given that we've only had a chance to set 4 fires, that was on the Gascogne. These 2 fires that have burned out have taken a fair amount of damage on the Gascogne. So, does that mean that you can no longer use the Seattle to deal with battleships? Absolutely not. You're going to have a harder time dealing with American battleships, especially if you're encountering Montanas or Iowas. But that's just simply a matter of prioritization. In this case, you're going to be, well, if you've got something else to set on fire, set that on fire, because they're going to take less damage from the fire. That's all. That's really all there is to it. And half the battle, you're going to be busy cleaning up after your team anyway, because somebody let the destroyers through. So setting fires to battleships isn't the only thing you're good at, right? In a light cruiser. Light cruisers are extremely versatile. So there are a lot of things you can do in light cruisers, and there are a lot of things you can do in other ships that set fires. Fires still work. They still do damage. They do a little bit less damage, especially to hide-here American battleships or ships in general, but that's it. Aside from that, it's just the same story as all around. I still believe this is a good change, because with ships like the Seattle, ships like the Worcester, battleship play at upper tiers has just become an absolute nightmare, because these things can set fires a lot because of the high fire rate and the large amount of guns. So I still think this is a good thing. It makes the fire flooding resistance actually a meaningful stat rather than something that you can basically ignore. And it makes the American top tier battleships and cruisers more distinct in that regard. So I still think this is a good thing. Anyway, that's it for today. Thanks everybody, and I'll see you next time. Bye.